Do you understand your dog? Do you know what your dog means when it makes a sound like this? Or a more complex sound like this? Have you any idea what a direct stare can do to a dog? Or what a wide open gaze can mean? I do. I'm a veterinarian and a psychologist. My name is Dr. Michael Fox, and I've spent the last 12 years studying dog behavior and the behavior of their cousins, wolves, coyotes, and foxes. I've also been able to compare a dog's development with human development. Do you know that in many ways, getting a puppy is very much like adopting a child? Because a puppy, like a human infant, goes through several developmental stages. I want you to know that dogs can develop emotional disturbances such as depression and jealousy. I want you to know why some dogs like to roll in odoriferous things, and that dogs communicate very much like we do. Dogs smile, and they have a silent language much like our own body language, a silent body language made up of subtle body signals. Once you begin to learn these signals, you'll find that you can communicate better with dogs, and they will begin to understand you better too. It's rather amusing to think that right now your dog probably reads your language and understands you better than you can understand it. But after you listen to this recording, all that's going to change. You see, I want to tell you about understanding your dog so that your dog will be happier and your life more enjoyable and enriched. And I also hope that your children will learn something from what I have to say so that their world will be enriched as well. I believe the more we understand about animals, the more we can appreciate them and come to a deeper understanding of ourselves as well. You see, I believe that your dog can be your key to new awareness. Now I'm going to tell you a bit about how a dog develops. When a puppy is first born, it is able to suck and crawl and find the teat. It's very sensitive to temperature, but it cannot hear or see. By 3 weeks of age, there is a transitional period when its eyes and ears are beginning to open. As this happens, the puppy becomes more aware of its environment. About 4 weeks of age, the little puppy is beginning to tune in to its mother and litter mates. For the first time, the puppy begins to explore the world. This is the beginning of a very critical period in the puppy's life, the period when social relationships are formed, relationships which will have a profound effect on its entire development. For example, if this little puppy at 4 weeks of age is kept with litter mates and has no contact with humans until 12 weeks of age or older, you won't be able to approach it, for the puppy will be afraid of human contact. If, however, that puppy has plenty of contact with people as well as dogs during the formative period between 4 to 12 weeks of age, it will be friendly towards people and dogs. This is what we call socialization. If you take the puppy at 4 weeks of age and just raise it with people, it will probably be afraid of dogs later in life. Scientific studies have shown that in order to get the best bonding of a puppy with people, it must have experience with human beings, especially between 4 to 12 weeks of age. So my advice is that the best time to take a puppy as a pet is somewhere in the middle of this period, between 6 to 8 weeks of age. By 6 weeks of age, the puppy has had some experience with litter mates, and this is important, because if the puppy doesn't have enough contact with dogs during this critical period, it will not only be afraid of them, but might later grow up to think that it is a person, and might become aggressive towards other dogs, and if it's a female, she might refuse to breed with her own kind. Around about 8 weeks of age, many puppies begin to show the first signs of fear towards strangers. Part of their growing up is learning how to handle this fear. Human infants also have a fear period. It begins about 7.5 to 8 months of age. If a puppy is kept in a cage or in the house and isn't exposed to things outside during its formative fear period, it may grow up to be extremely shy and will show fear of going into strange and unfamiliar places. Such a lack of exposure early in life will be aggravated if the puppy is somewhat timid. So the important rule is not only to give love, but to give the animal plenty of opportunity to explore the world and to go into as many different situations as is conceivably possible during the first 3 months of life. After about 6 weeks of age, puppies really begin to remember things, so you can begin simple training such as housebreaking. For now, remember it does take a lot of patience to break a dog of undesirable habits such as chasing cars or of being unhousebroken if it hasn't been properly trained early in life. But there are things you can do, and I'll tell you about them later on. First, I want to tell you what my study of wolves has shown me about the domestic dog and dog psychology. Wolves and coyotes are very difficult to train, and this brings out a very important rule. Trainability is not related to intelligence as such, but rather trainability is related to dependence. The more dependent the animal is on you, the easier it is to train. Socializing a dog makes it somewhat dependent upon you, but there is also an important genetic aspect to it as well, and this genetic aspect is one of the most important things that domestication has done to the dog, for it has made it more dependent upon us, and this can be the basis for abnormal behavior and neurosis. We all know that genes have an effect on temperament, that there are some breeds that are more trainable than others. Many of the hound breeds are far less trainable than the terriers, for example. This might be related to the basic nature of the hounds. They tend to follow their noses and get lost in what they are doing. So consider both genetic influences and the effect of early experience. And remember that the more trainable a dog is, the more dependent and the more socialized it must be to you. This is the key to developing your dog's IQ. Now that you understand where your dog's coming from, I want to tell you how to communicate with it. The first thing to remember about dog communication is that the dog is in the here and now. It is totally honest, like children. By looking at a dog and reading it, you can really find out what its intentions are and what it wants. For example, dogs have a special signal for playing which you can try with your own dog. Just get down on all fours with your arms extended and your hind end up in the air. Then make eye contact with your dog and make a sound like a loud panting. This is the canine equivalent of human laughter and means in dog language, I want to play. You can also try the yelp bark as well. Sometimes a playful dog will bow and then raise one paw rather like handshaking. One dog will do this to another dog and will put its paws on the other's shoulders. They might jump up and hug each other and start a wrestling play. How do you know when a dog is ready to have a fighting game with you rather than being ready to attack you? Look at the eyes. If it's staring at you and the head is level with the shoulders, it's probably ready to rush you. But if it's just looking at you with wide open eyes and the mouth is not a curled snarl, but the lips are pulled back rather like a human grin, it's probably ready to play. Dogs make themselves look big when they want to impress others or when they want to feel important and assert their dominance. They have hair along their back, especially around the shoulders, that we call hackles, and there are muscles that can erect these hairs so they look bigger. A dog in this display will also stiffen its legs and put its head up, and ears up and tail up. Look out when you see such a dog. It might be bluffing, but it might be putting on a display, which means keep away or else I will attack you. The dog might also be giving you a direct stare. Now in dog language, a direct stare is a threat. So once again, beware. And don't stare, especially if the dog is suspicious of you and if you are near its territory, for it will respond to your direct stare by attacking. In order to avoid such an unpleasant interaction, it's best to keep to yourself and avoid making eye contact, except briefly just to see what the dog's possible intentions are. A submissive or friendly dog will not stare at you in this way. It will look at you and then look away. Sometimes it will look down to the ground or wave its head from side to side and will repeatedly stick out its tongue as a licking signal towards you. It will also flatten its ears against its head and wag its tail in a low position. This is typical of a dog coming to greet you. Remember, if a dog is threatening you, don't try to force yourself. Rather, ignore the dog, but don't run away, because running away, which is a flight response, will switch many dogs into attack, and you will be chased and bitten. One of my dogs used to engage in this prey chasing activity when children were coming out of school, but he really liked children. So I instructed the children that when the dog was chasing them, to stop running and to turn around and talk to the dog. He would immediately roll over. This is one very good way to inhibit this kind of behavior. Dogs have other subtle pieces of communication in their repertoire, such as giving you a little nudge with their muzzle. This is a friendly gesture which might be derived from the kind of upward nudging and pawing that a puppy will give its mother as it reaches to nurse. Some dogs like to lean against you. This is a friendly contact kind of behavior and usually means, please pet me. Dogs do like to be petted, and stroking itself has a relaxing effect on the body. And we've found that when you do pet a dog, its heart rate slows down considerably and the whole body begins to relax. Dogs also communicate with their tails. The tail is used as a flag indicating the emotional state of the dog. If he's very excited, he'll wag his tail wildly. When two male dogs approach, notice how they put their tails up and how they wag them very stiffly. If a friendly dog comes along, the tail posture is lower. It's not between its legs, it's kind of halfway down, and it's wagged in a more relaxed way. This is a more submissive kind of greeting approach that it will do towards a higher-ranking dog or towards its owner. But look out when the tail is up and wagging stiffly. This is often a threat signal or an indication that the dog is very excited. It might be ready to chase you, to bite you, or it might be ready to play with you. Another signal to be wary of is from the dog wagging its tail in a low position, with its ears going forward and then back, while licking its lips anxiously, sometimes grinning and sometimes giving a very slight snarl. This dog is uncertain about you, and it might snap. This kind of dog is typical of the fear biter. It may be torn between greeting you and running away, or between staying to be petted and snapping defensively as you come closer. This behavior is deeply ingrained. It's part of its basic nature to be afraid and to be ready to defend itself. Very gentle handling and slow increments of exposure to strangers might work in some dogs. Sometimes you have to resort to tranquilizers, but very often the sad end is humane destruction. Now I'm going to tell you about one world of the dog that is very hard for us to enter. It is the world of smell. Dogs have an incredible ability far beyond ours to detect and to remember various odors. When two dogs meet, they investigate each other in very specific places where some of these social odors come from, such as underneath the tail from the anal glands and around the genitals where important odors come from the urine. Dogs will also investigate people in places where we produce social odors, such as the armpit and the groin. Male dogs do much more marking with their urine than female dogs, and their marking with urine might be to indicate to other dogs that the marker is putting flags of smell around his territory, or else he's simply leaving a calling card and saying, "This is me, and I came by recently," to other dogs. Bitches tend to mark much more when they are in heat, and this serves to attract male dogs because their urine at this time sends out a very potent signal. I think because of their extraordinary development of the sense of smell, dogs like to roll in odoriferous substances, like garbage, simply out of pleasure. Humans are basically a very visual species, and we will go out and wear a bright blouse or skirt or a tie or shirt, and we will get lots of comments from other people. I believe the dog, who is basically colorblind, will wear some potent odor that it's rolled in to show off. It makes the dog more interesting and attractive to other dogs. It also gets the dog lots of attention from human owners who want to wash the offensive odor away. This is one of the most ingrained, instinctive patterns in dogs and is perhaps one of the hardest to eradicate. I've told you that dogs have a body language in many ways like ours, and although dogs don't speak or use words, they do have the comprehension of a number of words. A well-trained dog can understand 40 different words or more. It is unfortunate, or perhaps fortunate as the case may be, that they cannot speak in the strict sense. But like us, they do have a paralanguage or an emotional language of various sounds with which they can communicate. We use this same paralanguage in our speech. We will say a number of words in a whining voice. Please, get down. Or utter a number of commands in a gruff, growling voice. Get off the sofa. These emotional overtones are what we call paralanguage. and are analogous to the various sounds that our dogs make. There is the whine, and the whimper, and the yelp, which are distress or infantile or attention-seeking noises. They might indicate that the animal is in severe pain or that it wants your attention. Then there is the growl, and then the growl accelerating into a bark. This can be a threat or a challenge, rather like a command. Then there is the repeated bark, which is like a volley of gunshot, which the dog will give to defend its territory. And then we have the howl. That strange sound that many dogs will give when you're playing the harmonica, or when somebody is singing, or a particular record is on, or a siren goes by. Some people believe that the sound that triggers the dog to howl might be extremely disturbing to it. It might even be painful, but perhaps this is not the case. Howling, even though it might sound terrible to our ears, is basically a pleasurable thing. Groups of wolves or jackals or coyotes will come together and have a group howl. It's like a group of people enjoying singing together. Here's another bit of canine behavior that you can recognize: guilt. It is remarkable to me that dogs do show guilt. When you come home and your dog is looking at you out of the corner of its eye, and when you look back it looks away and anxiously licks its lips and puts its head and tail down and ears back against its head and kind of crouches and even belly crawls towards you, you know that your dog has done something that it shouldn't have. It's stolen the roast off the table or broken a piece of pottery. You know that something has gone on that shouldn't have. It is remarkable because this is a clear demonstration that your dog has some degree of conscience, that your dog knows what is right and what is wrong, even what is socially acceptable to you and to others. Some people claim that their dogs must have ESP because the dog seems to pick up precisely what they're feeling, whether they're feeling happy, elated, depressed, anxious, whether they're ready to go out, or whether they are packing to go on a vacation. You should remember that a dog is tuned in to your emotions, and you express how you feel or what you're going to do in your body language. Your depression is reflected in your voice, the way in which you carry your head, the way you avert your eyes. The fact that you're preparing to go on vacation, you're bustling around, you're packing things, the dog is very much aware of what is going on. So there's no ESP at all involved here, but rather observation and communication. You should remember that your dog does have a very close relationship with you, and that it doesn't have an awful lot to do very often in the house during the day. And so it keeps an eye on you, probably more than you observe it. Perhaps your dog has one up on you, in that it is much closer in its awareness of how you are than vice versa. There are some examples, however, of dogs showing ESP that I describe in detail in my book, Understanding Your Dog. I will give one brief example here, which is called psychic trailing. On more than one occasion, a dog has been left with relatives or neighbors, and its owners moved many hundreds of miles away to a new home where the dog had never been before. Several months later, their dog appeared on the doorstep of their new home. How this journey was done, we will never know. We can, from what we know of animal migration, explain the ability of dogs who have been lost in the countryside or in a strange city to find their way back home. It's possible that they use the sun as a compass, and that they are able to navigate this way because they have a very exact sense of time. They know the position of the sun where their home is, and can sense that the sun is in a slightly different position in the place where they are lost. So they are able to navigate on the basis of these time-position differences. Now I'd like to tell you about a dog's territorial instinct. A dog does have a very strong sense of place. This has been called a territorial instinct. The dog might threaten, and worse, attack people who come into its territory. And this can be a problem, especially when the dog indiscriminately attacks people, such as mailmen and other service people visiting the house. If your dog is like that, it should be restrained. If you want your dog to be a better watchdog, take it to a training school recommended by your vet. and learn for yourself how to handle your dog on the leash and how to control it when it's off the leash. Remember, when you're walking a dog on a leash, it's defending your territory as well as its own. The dog's sense of place is also relevant to needing its own corner in the home. One particular place, like under a table or in the room, should be respected by others, especially children, as the dog's space, and the dog should know that this is one place where it will not be interfered with, where it will feel safe, and where it can rest without any intervention. Disciplining is a very important part of your relationship with your dog. Your dog should see you as the dominant figure in the household. You, the owner, should be the leader of the pack. With children, your dog could have, perhaps, an equal relationship as a litter mate or a companion. But you should establish dominance over your dog by training it on the leash and by teaching it to sit and to come. This is work for your dog, and it is important work because your dog learns that you are the one that gives the orders. Remember, dogs do have a basic instinct to follow a leader, and you must assume this role early on in your dog's life. If you haven't assumed this role yet, be sure to get into it soon. If your dog refuses to accept you as dominant, it might be a good idea to spend a short period with your dog at a recommended training school in your area. And if your pet is still a puppy, the act of picking it up itself is a simple way of asserting dominance. Here are some tips to make it easier. If you want to discipline your dog, establish eye contact. Give a direct stare and then give the voice command, down or no, or whatever is appropriate for the context. If your dog persists in being disobedient, it's no use beating it with a 2x4 or a rolled-up newspaper. In many dogs, this will just switch them into aggressive or defensive behavior. You have to approach discipline psychologically as well as physically. There are parts of the dog's body that you can make contact with that have great psychological impact. Grabbing a dog around the muzzle is one way of asserting your dominance. A dominant wolf will bite another around the muzzle. The jaws don't close because the bite is inhibited, but it is just strong enough to close the other's jaws. Muzzling a dog has a similar effect, and don't be afraid that if you muzzle a dog it won't be able to breathe, because the dog breathes through its nose, not its mouth, although it will pant to regulate its temperature when it's hot. Another way to discipline your dog is to seize it with one hand around the loose skin over its shoulders and to give it a rough shake. If it growls at you, you might have to get into a dominance fight with it. To do this, put on a pair of gloves, seize the dog around the scruff, and with your other hand seize its muzzle and forcibly pin it to the ground. With a small dog, this is not too difficult to do, and psychologically it is much more effective than trying to swat it with a rolled-up newspaper or a stick. With a bigger dog, it's more of a problem, and here you should seek the direct advice of a recognized dog training school. These problems, however, are not likely to arise if you have raised your puppy properly from infancy. A kindness to your dog, to other dogs, and to people alike is to restrain it, and to have your dog under control at all times. This is responsible dog ownership. There are a number of personality problems in dogs, and it would be good for you to recognize some of them. One is the over-attached dog. It can't bear to be left alone. It tears the house up when you're away. When you're at home, it follows you from room to room. How do you cope? One way of breaking the over-attachment is to put the dog in a kennel for a while. Go and visit your dog once or twice while it's there. 2 or 3 weeks in a kennel might help it readjust socially because it enjoys the company of other dogs and feels less totally dependent upon you. The dog that tears the house up when you are away might be doing it out of boredom or out of spite. It's a way of getting back at you because it doesn't want to be left alone. One way of helping a dog out of the misery of being left alone for extended periods is to get another dog, or to buy a pet for your pet, such as a kitten, another puppy, or even a tortoise. Another personality problem for you to be aware of is the neurotically over-dependent dog. I've known some dogs that are so neurotically attached that when their relationship with the owner is threatened, they develop some rather bizarre behaviors. One was a Pekingese that suddenly developed a paralysis in both hind legs when its owner had a baby. The owner transferred all her attention from a dog that had been her child substitute for many years to her new baby, and this was too much for the dog. The treatment here was simple. Give the dog more attention and make it feel more at home. The neurotically over-dependent dog might nip at a visitor who is getting the attention of the owner. Other times it will sulk, or show depression, or begin to eat excessively, or scratch and groom itself, sometimes to the point of mutilation. Others develop a hive-like reaction or asthmatic-like condition, or even diarrhea, or severe constipation, or else they begin to urinate and defecate in the house. All these are indications of some emotional disturbance, and the cause in the neurotically over-dependent dog is invariably some threat to its close relationship with the owner. Make sure that your dog is not over-dependent upon you. Then there's also the other extreme. Some permissively raised dogs, instead of becoming too dependent upon you, can become canine delinquents, psychopaths, who, upon full maturity, might take you on as a potential rival and try to gain the position as number one in the household. Here again, it is vitally important to get this type of behavior corrected at an obedience school in order to establish your relationship as the dominant one. In extreme cases, castration can work, but very often such maladjusted dogs have to be put to sleep. How can you stop the dog who greets you as soon as you come in, jumps up all over the place, gets so excited that it urinates, knocks over furniture with a wildly wagging tail, and drools all over you? One way is to ignore it. Another is to squeeze its front toes quite hard, or else tread on its hind feet as it jumps up. This will inhibit it. Then, when it quietens down, you give it attention. Remember, punish bad behavior, reward good behavior. A common problem with dogs is the housebroken dog that suddenly becomes unhousebroken. First, you must consider that it might have a bowel upset or a bladder infection. Check with your vet, and having ruled out any clinical cause, look for some psychological reason. The presence of strangers in the house or another animal. Perhaps the carpet has been recently cleaned, or perhaps you've changed your life habits. Perhaps you're beginning to spend a great deal of time outside of the house, and the dog is trying to get back at you. Some dogs will develop a habit of defecating or urinating in the house after they have been disciplined. This again is the dog's way of getting back at you. One way of curing the dog if he urinates or defecates during the night while you are asleep is to confine it in a small cage for the night. Any dog in its right mind won't make a mess right where it sleeps. Another personality problem you would do well to understand is the jealous dog. Remember, with a jealous dog, to understand how it feels. It's behaving like a child who is feeling put out by the presence of a younger brother or sister. So make the jealous dog feel that it too is loved, that it too belongs to the family, and give it plenty of attention so it won't feel jealous about the presence of a new child, or the presence of guests, or the presence of a new pet. An important part about your developing dog sense is an understanding of the dog's sexual drive. I had a letter once from a lady who had a little puppy, and she thought that she had a sex maniac on her hands. The little puppy would, on the slightest provocation, try to clasp her arm when she was petting it, or her ankle as she walked by, and he would seize her and show pelvic thrusts. Such behavior, which we call sex play, is very common in young puppies. It can be inhibited by gentle discipline, just saying no and pushing the puppy away. In contrast to the wolf, dogs are more promiscuous. I have known more than one male dog that becomes extremely aggressive and is very difficult to handle after it has been excited by a female that is in heat. Such males will tear at the door and try to get out, and might even attack the owner of a bitch who is carrying the odor of the animal in heat. Occasionally, a bitch, when she is in heat, will also show extreme sexual frustration and make every attempt to get outside. I think that when you have a puppy, you should consider whether or not you want to have it spayed or castrated. Castration can often make a dog less aggressive when it matures, and it might not wish to roam as much, which will make it a far more desirable pet and will make its life much more placid. There is a problem today also of too many unwanted pets, and spaying and castration may have some help in reducing this pet pollution problem. I think the most obnoxious problem dog that I had once was a barker. Wild canines hardly ever bark, but domestic dogs will bark for attention, they'll bark out of sheer cussedness, they'll bark to defend their territory, they'll bark when they're excited, and some, I swear, just bark for the sake of making a noise. It's a difficult behavior to subdue. Shock collars have been tried with effect on some dogs, but others it just frightens them and makes them bark and yelp even more. Disciplinary training with a sharp command and a tug on a leash leading to a choke chain might work. There is an operation where the dog can have its vocal cords removed, and instead of barking, it comes out with a hoarse whisper. This might be necessary if the only other alternative is to get rid of your dog for the sake of your own sanity or for your neighbors. Another problem behavior in dogs is the chaser, because it's a traffic hazard and it might be run over. Again, using a long leash and a choke chain to pull the dog over backwards and to scare it is one way of inhibiting it from chasing. Another way is to have the car driver or cyclist as an ally. Have such an ally throw a bucket of water onto the dog or shoot it with a water pistol. This can act as a deterrent. But again, for some dogs, it can act as a stimulus to make them chase cars and bicycles with even greater fervor. Here we must return to the rule of responsible ownership, namely, never allow your dog off the leash unless you can exert some control over it. Here's another personality that one sometimes meets in the dog world. I call it the grouch. This is the dog who sulks around and wants its own way, and if it doesn't get its own way, it sulks or growls and becomes a very difficult individual to communicate with. It might even nip for attention, or when people come, just walk away, not fearfully, but just sulkily, probably because it's jealous that it's going to receive less attention. With a grouch, you should try to motivate it, to give it an interest in life, play with it, take it to the park, try to get it involved in a ball game or chasing a stick. If it's an old dog, it might really be a geriatric problem. Its eyes might be developing cataracts and might have some arthritis. Here you should seek veterinary advice, because there are a number of drugs and methods of treatment that can give your dog a renewed vitality. Also, pay attention to diet, because overweight is a common problem in the older dog, and one that is overweight is likely to be more grouchy and less inclined to exercise. The final personality type that I'm going to tell you about is the super dog, the impossible lassie on television. Every time I watch that program, I think of the dogs that I've had, and of my childhood, when I wish that my dog would be a lassie too. But that never seemed possible. Certainly some of the feats that these canine superstars on television and films do are just tricks of good photography. However, it is possible to produce a super dog. A super dog comes from careful breeding and from careful rearing and from communication. But you don't need a television superstar to have a super dog, for if you have a deep understanding of your dog's needs and are able to express your needs to your dog, you can have a super relationship. Remember, communication is a two-way thing, and what can unite man and dog is understanding. Just as we strive for children to be super children, to optimize the potentials that they have without emotional hang-ups or other blocks or obstacles, just as we try to understand them, we can learn to understand our dogs. Because with love, understanding, and the right environment, your dog can become your closest companion in the animal world.